Ladies and gentlemen, listeners, lovers, and friends, welcome back to the prod. I am your host, Jim Fogarty. We're broadcasting from Two Ticks and the Dog Productions up above Dave Grohl Alley in beautiful downtown Warren, Ohio. I have a cool guest on today. She's going to talk about a lot of things that are relevant to running for office, in particular, city council. But we're going to cover a whole host of areas about her background, her life, what she sees fit for the future of Warren, should she be elected, and all the stuff that she has done and plans to do. Before we get to this amazing guest, though, gotta shout out our sponsors, of course, the Station Square Restaurant, Salvatore's Italian Grill, Modern Methods Brewery, Prosperity Partners, and Brokers Realty. Thank you, folks, for sponsoring the podcast. Without you, none of this would be possible. Let's get right to it. You are a candidate independent for the 6th Ward Council of Warren City. Lea Dotson, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for taking time out of your schedule, both as a professional and a mother and a community activist, and now a candidate, which takes a considerable amount of time.
Yes.
What have you been doing in the last several months to get prepared for this?
Oh, man, besides just taking inventory of all the things I just didn't know about myself and that running for a candidacy brings out, just talking to people. Like, really, I've spent a lot of time door knocking. So did a lot of door knocking, talking to different people, I've been trying to talk to as many people as possible because I feel like that's how I formulate a lot of like my thoughts and my ideas. So really, I've just been doing a lot of talking.
How many voters are in the 6th Ward? Do you know? Or I should say, let's say this: what's the population of the 6th Ward, and how many voters? Because I know that number is always smaller.
Yeah. So I think the population, it's not a direct quote, but I think the population is somewhere like around 3,000 ish, 2,000, 3,000 ish. But voting is abysmal. Voting, I think, on like primaries averages like in a contested primary, not a contested like general, is like maybe 500, 600. So, it's sad, but I've started to joke and say, more people vote for prom queen at Harding than do the 6th Ward sometimes. And I'm beyond wagging my finger at my community for not voting, like at this point, because it's just been a lot of finger wagging and, people die for your right to vote. But at some point, I think that, those of us in politics, and I'm not in politics yet, but I think people in politics have to take inventory of why they're not voting. So maybe we need to put better candidates and more energizing candidates and candidates that really feel like, that may speak to them to earn their vote. But right now they're disenchanted. I mean, if you've been, locked into a community that you have not seen substantial change in decades, it's not gonna,
Yeah, you're not
inspire you to vote.
Yeah, you're not encouraging. You're encouraging kind of apathy. Unfortunately.
Yeah, so it's and I get it because we should vote because it's vitally important, especially on a local level, where you feel the tangible effects of not voting. But I think at some point we have to do a better job of messaging because right now it's just kind of like that parental finger wagging and why don't you vote? Well, we have to put better candidates in front of our people if we want to energize them to vote.
Well, I'll dovetail off of that because I agree with you. I think we also have to hold the leaders who are elected, public officials. I'm going to use, I hate using air quotes, but I'm going to use it because it's a visual, meaning leaders. They are leaders, though.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
They need to take more responsibility to lead, in my opinion, and to kind of like a team captain. I had this conversation earlier. When you play sports and you're on the field, you look to leadership to your team captain, and then your coach, and then your other players. And if the coach is challenging the captain and the captain is challenging the players then feel a certain responsibility to respond to that in a positive way, right?
For sure.
We're down at halftime, I had a great football coach, Coach Tony Napolet, and he would rally up the troops. Some of it wasn't always very nice. It wasn't always sunshine and rainbows.
Right.
It was like, look around. Who do you want in a in the foxhole with you?
Mm-hmm.
You know, these are your brothers. Would you let this guy go straight? Oh, no, you get psyched up, right? And then you'd go out and perform, and you'd smash the team in the second half.
Right.
I use that sports analogy because I think it's the easiest one for people who done competitive athletics, and even if they're just spectators, to understand, because it's the same thing in a company, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the leader is not challenging his team, then the team can kind of get complacent.
For sure.
I don't think the communities like Warren have a real chance to turn around unless everybody just gives a little bit more. And I don't mean necessarily more of their finances or their resources, but their resources in time and energy, maybe their talents. And certainly I commend you and your opponent and anybody who seeks public office to make change, because I've talked to you on a couple of occasions before. I see you on Facebook now. I know people who know you, and they say your heart and your motivation are true.
Yes.
I make that assumption the same of your opponent. And the reason I kind of bring this up is because I want the prodders out there, those are our listeners, I want the prodders out there to know that we reached out to your opponent, Hania Price, back in, I think we had this conversation back in May or June.
Yeah.
When this idea kind of started to formulate. And I invited her to the show back then, and she had some, she says, well, can we do the show in September? Or in August, rather. Actually, I think she asked in September, and I said, listen, I want to get the show done because we have several shows that are ahead that'll be produced, and I want this to come out before the general election, right? So you both can get your ideas out. For sure. She requested a later date, and I couldn't do August because I was traveling, et cetera. And I responded to her and I said, hey, this is now maybe 3 weeks ago. Hey, I have time September the 26th. Be the first available time to have a show. Send her a couple messages. No response until this morning, just a few hours ago at 10 o'clock. All right, it's an hour and a half ago, 10:04. I got a message to say, sorry, I can't make it. I'm out there canvassing and doing, the political stuff that you have to do, the actions that you have to do to earn votes. My only response to that is, maybe it's not my only. My response to that is, hey, listen, I appreciate you getting back to me the day that we're doing the show, saying that you can't make it. But I don't think that using the 2 hours that we'll share together today in comparison with knocking door to door, I really feel like, and if you look at the stats from our old show, just on YouTube, but you'll see it on YouTube, but over across all podcasting platforms, we're probably 400 or 500 listeners locally. When we do a show with like Pedro Sauer, who is a Brazilian jiu-jitsu master, we get a lot of listeners from Brazil. You and Hania don't need listeners from Brazil. You need listeners from Warren, Ohio. Right. Specifically the 6th Ward, but Warren, Ohio in and of itself. Right. I think we need to always talk about a united Warren, and to have an opportunity to speak to the citizens of Warren versus door knocking. I appreciate you getting back to me, but I don't think that that's a good use of your time. That's my professional opinion as a political consultant. Here's my last disclaimer, and I promise we're going to get into some real stuff.
That's cool.
Neither candidate, neither you nor your opponent, has hired me in any capacity to do any type of work. So that's my disclaimer. I don't ever want this show to be viewed in a position where we're just, obviously I want it to be a positive show, right, but we're just giving a voice to select people during a campaign. Right. We had both Mayor Doug Franklin on and Ken McPherson. Those guys, came on at separate times. I was interested in having you both on at the same time, not as a debate, but just as an open discussion. Right. Because again, if someone, the person who doesn't win a race, that doesn't mean their activity then towards the community and helping out and pushing what they feel is right should stop. Right. That should continue. Right. So here's my imploring both you and Hania Price to whoever wins this. The person who doesn't, please continue your passion and being a part of the community to make real change. Because if we don't do it as citizens and as elected leaders, nothing will ever change.
Right.
And we need a lot of help in Warren. We
do. And I agree. And I think the reason why, I've had to do as much door knocking, if not more, running as an independent candidate. And, it's because there's a lot of misinformation and information that I have to get out. And you can only get that out, one-on-one. But I feel like, even though I'm running for 6th Ward Council, I specifically knew I was going to do this show because it is broad. You're not just talking to the 6th Ward. And as a council person, you're not just, you're not running as a, it's bigger than your little fiefdom. Like
right.
you have to network and talk across the board to every single last ward, and then what you do has broader implications for the entire city. So, it's good that the entire city knows, who else is going to be on council, because that person is going to affect their lives too. Because even though you're representing a ward, you are working on behalf of the whole city.
How did you, with a very accomplished background, involved in a lot of things? You were a former school principal, you've worked with TNP, you've worked with MVOC, a lot of alphabet soup there, but you have a Bachelor of Arts and a master's degree from Ohio State. Your BA's from Kent?
Kent, yes.
Kent. That's why Marvis is wearing the Kent colors.
Maybe.
You're already trying to prime him.
You're
going to Kent.
Yep.
You're a legacy student. I want my son to go to Kent too, actually. I didn't go to Kent. My wife did, but I like Kent. With your very accomplished background and all the headaches that will come with politics, as you know, why do this? Why run?
So it's something about that accomplished background, right? So I'm some people's trajectory is like, I know I want to be a nurse. These are the steps that you take to be a nurse, right? My trajectory has always been like, I cannot pretend like I've just been like, I know exactly what I want to do at all times. No, my trajectory has been a lot of just keeping my eyes open, for opportunities. And sometimes it goes up here, there, wherever. And I honestly believe like my mission, I'm mission driven. So me being mission driven has been the driving force for me to do anything in my professional career. It hasn't been the type of career, it's been the mission driven. So one thing has always led to another. So I went to school for Pan-African Studies and Political Science because I had no clue what I wanted to go to school for when I graduated high school. I just knew from a very young age, because I had very socially conscious parents, and I grew up, literally having to sit down at the table every night, same time, and we watched the evening news. So I heard my parents and my older brother kind of banter back and forth about, what was going on in the world. So I grew up very socially conscious, and I just didn't know what I wanted to do. So I said, well, I'm going to go and I'm a lover of history. So I said, I'm going to go into Pan-African Studies and Political Science because I just wanted a broader knowledge of, like socio-economic thought, because I also learned right around 12, 13 about like inequality and like, I grew up thinking I was rich because I had great parents, but I grew up in Palmer Heights. They were very working class, and then I started to see some of the inequalities again, listening to my parents. So I said, I want to know more about that. So I went to school, graduated from Kent from there, and got into community organizing. So that's what took me to MVOC and community organizing. And when I community organized in Warren for a while, my heart was always still kind of with the students and with kids. And from there, I said, you know what? Oh, well, even before then, when MVOC, a collaboration between MVOC and the Ween Foundation, they had the brainchild, which is now TNP. They said Warren needs a community development corporation, and so they kind of stuck me on that project. So I was literally there from inception, from the steering committees with the Ween Foundation and Joel Ratner and Janice Small, who was the person who headed up, actually creating TNP. I sat on that steering committee. So I actually sat on the steering committee that hired Matt Martin, who's the executive director. So all the bylaws, all of that stuff, I was there for at the inception, and then I transitioned into employment there, and then I transitioned out of there into on the board. But again, everything has been mission driven. And so I said, I want to go into education. And again, because my eyes are always kind of open for the next opportunity, I'm not very linear. I'm always looking to see how I can make an impact. The fellowship from Ohio State came about. And then I applied for the fellowship at Ohio State, and that's how I became a principal. But to answer your question, that was a long way to say that every piece of my journey has been something along the lines of working for the betterment of my community in some capacity. Even as a principal, it's been because I've been very very hyper focused on the structures that create inequality in education. And that's why I became a principal, is because I wanted to deal with the structural inequality in education, not the practitioner part, not the teacher part, but I wanted to deal with the structural issues. So that's always been in me. So that background just came right back full force, where, it went right back in the circle, where when I found out that Miss Sappho was not running again, I said, right now is the time for me to go back into it, because you can't care about, the students without caring about the community that they come from. And that's just my background. And I feel like with my personality, who I am as a person, I'm a very headstrong person. I feel like we need that in council right now, especially for the 6th Ward. That we need somebody who is not somebody who is down there looking for a title. I don't care about a title. I have a title. I put in my dues. I'm not looking for a title. I'm not looking for anything, which is why I ran as an independent. I don't want to be represented by anything other than the people. I don't want to be represented by anything, no political party, no platform, just the people. So that's why I'm running independent, because I really feel like my personality, my heart, what I want to accomplish is right now is a perfect opportunity, because I can always go back to being a principal.
Lenten time or anytime, Station Square Seafood is delivered daily and always prepared fresh every time. And now to go with your salmon, swordfish, or any favorite dish, Station Square's small batch signature seasonings: lemon pepper, Cajun, or charcoal steak rub.
Need great food fast? Visit mysalvatores.com and order anything on our menu for quick pickup. All of your favorites ready when you are. Specials available on mysalvatores.com. Order today.
With that buzz of select Brazilian Dolce coffee beans, that brew Ipanema's seductively sweet beach coffee, they mingle a flawless measure of their crisp Darlene lager. Somehow, somewhere in a secret lab with modern methods, they blend the perfectly balanced, light, uplifting, gold medal winning brew known as the Percolator. Available at Modern Methods Tap Room or the new Darlene Lounge on Courthouse Square in downtown Warren. Were your parents very altruistic? How was that thought for community instilled in you? Where do you think that comes from?
Well, my dad, I don't know. They weren't. They were just living, So my dad came up with the Great Migration. The African Americans who came up from down south to find better jobs. My dad was a sharecropper until he was 13. So
Wow.
So I know that history we think of a lot of times is like 400 years in the past. No, not my granddad, not my great granddaddy. My daddy was a sharecropper until he was 13. So him and his family moved up here. So he's seen a lot of stuff. You know what I mean? And he's lived through a lot of things. And, he came up north and realized a lot of things. And my mother, she was born here. She was raised in the flats. Heard so many great stories about the flats, but she was raised in the flats. So I think what shaped them is just life. You know what I mean? And they just had the intuition to not shield their kids from it. Like we had like real live discussions. And like I said, we sat as a family, and we discussed things. So, I just think that they just had their eyes open and talked to their kids about life. So I don't know if they were really altruistic as much as they were just like, look, I'm just preparing you for what's out here.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. I always like to see how people are shaped and how they're made.
Mm-hmm.
They probably provided, to have those discussions, the opportunity to spark your imagination and to see how I can make this place better. What is the piece that I can do to make it better?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
See, we need more people like you in the world.
Oh, thanks.
You're welcome. You're welcome. First off, people who are willing to put it on the line to run for public office, because a lot of people shy away from it because it's gotten so ugly, especially recently.
Lord.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But not only that, I've seen you at other events, and certainly working for like TNP and Mahoning Valley Organizing Collaborative. Like, I just think that you see, I don't know you really that well, obviously, so I'm just surmising this, but you see the world for what it could be, maybe not what it is. I mean, you see it for what it is because obviously we see that there's got to be some changes made.
Yeah.
I'm sidetracking here for a second. Did you go to school with Marvin Logan?
No, he's a little bit younger than me.
Okay.
Yeah, I know Marvin, but I did not go to school with him.
I think his bachelor was in Pan African Studies at Kent.
Maybe. Yeah, but he's younger than me. And
Okay.
plus I had my daughter relatively young, so I was not a traditional Kent State student. Like when I graduated, I think my daughter thought she was supposed to get a bachelor's too, because she was there from the time she was a baby. Like I was a super duper senior because I had my daughter young, so I did not go like straight through. I took, went a semester, took it off, went another semester, took it off, had to take a whole year off. But my daughter was a baby when I started Kent State, and when I graduated she was 8. And when I tell you she was like right next to me every class, like my professors were so cool, like they got to know her so well, like when I would come in, they would come and get her out of class and like take her with them. So literally, like when I graduated from Kent State, I think she probably was like, well, where's my degree?
What a great experience. Did you just have 2 children?
Yes. 22-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son.
Now what is she doing now?
So she is working. She is a preschool teacher. She went to New York for a little bit for theater. So she's super into theater.
Awesome.
But health issues brought her back to Warren, so she's actually on her way to Kent State too.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, she's transitioning to Kent State to go into their theater program.
Trumbull or local?
Trumbull.
Yes.
Yeah, she's gonna go into Trumbull. She's in the play right now at the Playhouse. Yeah. So
awesome.
Yay. But yeah, she's gonna transition to Trumbull next semester to go into theater and early education.
Now listen, I'm going to tell you this. I only know this because I sit on the advisory board for the Kent State Trumbull Theater.
Oh, cool.
There are scholarships that are available for those who are majoring or minoring in theater at Kent State Trumbull because they're trying to boost the enrollment out there.
Oh.
So I will,
Got to talk offline about that.
I'll connect you with I almost said Ron Sinicio, who's a director buddy of mine, but Eric Kildow, who is he's the main guy over there.
Yeah, she worked in a play with him before.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. That's great. That's great. I want to meet her.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
I'd
for
love to meet
sure.
her. So you're bringing that experience to this potential run. You've already answered my question about why run as an independent. Everybody has an issue with. I shouldn't say an issue with Warren. Everybody has their issues that are important to them in Warren. What do you think are the top 3 things you want to that you think are things you want to change? What are the top 3 issues for you?
So I guess I can answer that by talking about I guess my I'm running on a platform of like accountability and like positioning, right? So I think what has to happen in Warren is we need like a paradigm shift of how we think about Warren, and we really need we can't keep telling the same sad story. You know what I mean? And to your point, about everybody got issues. Everybody got their issues with Warren. Yeah, everybody does. And we could focus on that. But at the same time, if we stay focused on that, we will never position ourselves for to get anything better because we're constantly looking backwards. So I think to answer that, I have to the way that I've been going at it is understanding what's happened in the past, but continually looking forward. Like we got to start looking forward. And that's why I said I'm running on this thing of like accountability and positioning, right? So I think especially in the 6th Ward where I'm running at, we have to have some accountability. Like again, I grew up where we were not rich whatsoever, but we had a whole community. Like everybody was mama. Like, you hear stories about that. Like, where, you couldn't go down the street because everybody would tell on you. You couldn't do anything. Everybody could, chastise your kid, and everybody is lamenting about, oh, we don't have that anymore. Well, why not? You know what I mean? There's no reason outside. There's no reason for us not to have it. Like, why lament on it? And instead of like thinking through how do we create spaces and how do we create the atmosphere for that to be the reality again? You know what I mean? We had a real live community. And I think as far as like the accountability measure, we can't put everything on the city officials. Because this is not always, everything can't be put on the city officials. We have to hold some accountability to ourselves in our neighborhood. We have to start looking out for our people in our neighborhood. We have to, report what we see in our neighborhood. You know what I mean? We have to take more accountability for each other again. So that's why I did certain things like starting up a block watch again, starting up a neighborhood organization, and not just like a do-gooder neighborhood association, which is fine, but no, a neighborhood association that is very, intent on being politically minded and being active, being activist minded, because we need that, right? So we need that type of accountability amongst each other, because that's our community. If we waiting around for somebody to save us from us, we're going to be waiting forever. You know what I mean?
Yes.
We can't wait for somebody to save us for us. So especially in the Sixth Ward, where we have issues with crime and we have issues with like derelict properties, and we have like these, the Sixth Ward, to me, and that's not just because I live there, but it is the most, to me, I think it just suffers the most from like destabilization. It's just like it really needs stabilized as far as like the housing market, the look, the feel of it. It needs some help. You know what I mean? So that brings me to the accountability from the city. I keep saying we can't run on a platform of equality over equity, because those are two completely different things. Like equality, when we're talking about city resources and city services, what I've been finding out is when I talk to people, in the city, it's just like, well, we don't have the manpower, or we don't, we only have so many people, or, we got to split things up. Okay, that may sound equal, but that's not equitable. Equitable means the places that need the most help get the most help, stabilize it and move on. So when we're thinking through like, because, and again, I'm solution oriented, so I can't take it when somebody tells me what we can't do. Well, we don't have enough people, because I've been a manager, It's not about what you can't do. It's about looking at what you have in front of you and restructuring it to make sense. You know what I mean? So you just can't rely. You can't just say, well, we don't have enough police officers. Okay, well, how are the police officers utilizing their time?
Right.
You know what I mean? Okay, well, we don't have enough resources. Okay, well, how are we utilizing those resources? Where is the money being spent? You know what I mean? So those are like deeper questions that we have to ask. And I think a lot of times, unfortunately, my thought, and again, this is like a thought from the outside looking in, and what I have found out is that when you get on the inside looking out, it's a whole different picture. But from the outside looking in, to me, it's too many excuses as to what we can't do. And and that's another reason why I'm running, is because I can't be a person that's just saying what we can't do. I have to look at things, because I'm very strategic minded. I have to look at things for what they are and think through like, how do we better utilize the resources that we have, and figure out how to get more resources on top of that. So some of the bigger issues, definitely crime. Again, like the derelict houses, the houses that the property, the West Side just looks so run down, and it's so disheartening. You know what I mean? So that's a big problem, because I understand, again, from being a principal, the psychological effects of that on a community and on kids. There's real live psychological effects of walking past a house that is that dilapidated on a daily basis. What are you internalizing about yourself? Like, and I kind of grew up with a little bit of that, where I honestly grew up thinking East Market was out of reach. Like, that's something for somebody else. And now I'm in a position like I can buy one of those, you know what I mean? But I thought that was so out of reach, and that's so unfair to our kids for them to be being raised in communities where subconsciously nobody has to tell them what's out of reach. They're just looking around and internalizing that things are out of reach for them. And that's horrible for me. So that's a reason why I'm running and I'm pushing so hard, because those are the things that I want to change. If that makes sense. Did I answer the question?
Yes. Yeah, you did. Okay. You did.
Like that answer.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
I like the way that you think. Want to be debt-free faster, save money in taxes and insurance, and retire with more wealth? Call Zach Byler at Green Life Holdings today for full-service financial advisory. 330-219-5225. Top Shelf Bar, 450 wines on hand, and your choice of local craft beers, including Modern Methods Brewery Double IPA, now available at the Station Square Restaurant. If you're looking to buy new or sell your current home or commercial property in Northeast Ohio or Northwestern Pennsylvania, look no further than Brokers Realty at brokerssold.com. I also wish that I had this conversation earlier this morning in regards to, you say, not you, everybody, politics is local, right? All politics is local. It's how it affects you. So a couple years ago, and it's the same idea. How are you utilizing the resources? There's no reason why a snowstorm should shut down downtown and the commerce that happens down here because we don't know where to put the snow.
Yeah.
Every other major metropolitan can figure this out.
Right.
I couldn't get into this building to haul my gear out for almost 4 days. Now, I know we had record snow and this happened and the shift changed and this and that, but 4 days?
Right.
You couldn't figure it out for 4 days?
And that's unacceptable.
I'm a tiny player up here. My livelihood isn't based off of retail sales or food service sales, but there's a lot of that down here. And if people can't come and park and go to these shops or go to these restaurants, that's business that's out of reach and can't be recouped for owners who are down here that rely on it.
Right.
Me, it's an inconvenience. I can't bring my gear down and load it into my truck because there's a 6-foot snow mound in front of in front of my building. But they're doing it other places. When you travel outside, why are the roads always better once you get out of Warren? I can't figure this out. And like you say, we're hearing things like we don't have the manpower, we don't, etc. I challenge the leadership, and I challenge you to, first off, once you get in, I'm whoever gets in, okay? But if it's you, or it's Hania, or it's whomever is running for other places, when you get in, remember, write yourself a note before you get into office, because I've seen this happen more times than not. I've been involved in running political campaigns for over 20 years. A lot of people get in office and they just want to play it safe because re-election is right around the corner. Okay, and so you do things to play politics to appease people so that you can be re-elected. Instead of maybe, I'm not saying to go out there and browbeat people.
Right.
But it's okay to ruffle some feathers and challenge the troops to do better.
Yes.
And if you don't have the answers or the solutions as leaders, as elected leaders, and you're not out there actively challenged like a coach or a captain of a team would challenge their players in the community to, hey, listen, if it's not a monetary thing, it's an energy thing or a time thing, let's all just give a little extra, 10% more of your time and energy to make sure your yard's cleaned up, pick up the trash, get involved in a community organization. Kudos to you for starting a block watch. Okay, that's awesome. To form a neighborhood coalition, awesome. Like, if you don't challenge people to do that from an elected position that you're getting paid for, or stipend in the case of no one's getting rich on running for city council. I don't know anybody that's just city council is their only job unless they retired from some other place and that's what they're doing now. If you're not challenging your constituents and you're not showing up and you're getting paid to do it, how can you expect your neighborhood people, your voters, your business leaders to get involved and do extra?
Right.
You got to challenge them to do extra, give them a way to do that, and do it yourself.
Yes.
Otherwise, boy, I don't think you should be asking for raises within the city. I'm going to talk about that too. I want to shift gears a little bit. Recently we've got an administration that's looking for, and it's not just the administration, it's council, it's a lot of departments. From what I understand, if they pass this resolution, the raises will be tied into police and fire that are unionized, and every time they get a pay increase, the administration and city council will also get a pay increase. How you feel about that?
So I have not looked at the legislation or the ordinance that is what you're completely referencing. So I have thoughts, right? I think so I talked about it before. Warren, we talked about like Warren being a weak mayor, strong council city, right? So in that inherently entails that council has a lot of responsibility. I think the problem that we also see, and this is speaking to your point, is that we can't have it both ways. Sometimes we want to kind of like, because somebody said something to me one time and it kind of irritated me. It was like, you just running for 6th Ward Council. And I was like, first of all, just should not be in there, because it's an important position. You know what I mean? Council has a lot more responsibility than, you know, the mayor on the day-to-day running of the city in certain areas. So it's not just a city council position. But I think a lot of times, unfortunately, like you said, everything reflects leadership. And unfortunately, if we don't take who we're putting into even these council seats serious, as far as like, and when I say qualifications, I'm not saying qualifications like you have to be master degreed up to run for council. That's not what I'm saying. But you should have some type of understanding of how government should run, of how you should have some type of understanding of you know, strategy, of negotiations, because you're dealing with these type of things. You should have some type of understanding of like being able to look at an ordinance and kind of see the bigger picture as to like what that's going to look like. You should have some type of understanding to be able to, you know, politic with, you know, the operations department to kind of help think through what makes sense. Why does this not make sense? So you have to have a managerial kind of thought process along with the passion. And unfortunately, sometimes we get so caught up on passion, we forget that people need to be able to do this job. And if you want somebody able to do this job, like you just got done saying, you are going to severely limit your talent pool paying, you know, what it is that you're paying, because you can't, you have to have another job. You cannot just live off of council, right?
I'm gonna fix your mic screen. Continue though. Keep going.
Oh yeah. You can't live off of what council pays you. Nobody gets into this, you know, to make a, you know, to be enriched off of it. Nobody does that. But I think at the same time, you have to start looking at this as a professional endeavor, right? You know, council has to be, you know, professional. You have to start thinking about putting people in here who can actually make a difference. So with that, I do say that is probably way too low. I'm just being honest. Like, that is not going to entice, you know, you're going to severely limit the talent pool. Like, you just have to be like, almost like you just said, like altruistic, just to be like, I'm just going to run for council, because it is too low. Same thing with like teachers and fire. I think all of those are things that are like way too low, that we have to think through, like what makes sense so that we can get a better talent pool. But at the same time, now, should it just be ongoing with no end, tied into, you know, unionized, you know, contracts? Not exactly sure about that one right there. Like, I do think that they need to, you know, think through like what an increase should look like and what would be comparable to other cities when you want quality candidates. Now, should that just be a never ending pay raise without any type of, you know, evaluation? Because my thing is, I come from a sector where you're always evaluated in doing something, and I don't know how the pay raise would work without some type of evaluation process to say, like, you know, is this warranted? You know what I mean? Like, so I think there's two ways that you could look at it. So do I think that there does need to be a pay increase? I do. But do I think that should just be everlasting without any type of evaluative process? No.
Well, a lot of people will say the evaluation process is, hey, don't reelect me in 4 years, right? Mm. But that's kind of, once you get entrenched, it's much more difficult for a non-incumbent to unseat an incumbent, right, who's in office, and then who has, and there's, I mean, I'm not naive enough to think that politics is not going to come into play. Right. But once you're in, on the inside, and I think it's brilliant that you said that. I know that, you know, you said, I know my perception is going to change once I'm on the inside, yeah, not looking out. But you start to curry favor with other political folk and candidates, and then it becomes difficult for you to get knocked out of office, even if you're not doing the thing. So I don't know. That's probably a much longer, you know, detailed and I don't want to say boring, but a very detailed conversation. How do we change that? How would we, maybe it's in the legislation and how that is written and how we can evaluate and hold accountable the folks who are running our city. Because it's hard for me to think, and I'm not, Doug, I'm not attacking you, okay? Eddie, I'm not attacking you. I'm merely stating it's really difficult for a taxpayer, a voter, to see when the median the median salary of someone in Warren is so low, and the city officials, not so much council, but these elected officials are getting big pay raises, and it's 3 times as much as now. Obviously, it's going to be difficult to find quality candidates. The same with the police force.
Yeah.
Right. Tito Brown's a friend and a client, and we talked about on the show he was on. We're gonna Youngstown is raising the pay for entry-level officers because you can go to Starbucks and get $15 an hour to start out in Warren as a cop. It's $14.
This is crazy.
You know how you're dealing with life and death situations at times, and you're gonna pay this person $14. That's hard to
sell.
Yeah, hard to sell, and hard to sell giving raises that. Listen, there's a lot of positive things that have happened too, and we're going to focus on those. It just so happens there's so many things that need fixed and addressed in the city of Warren that people tend to focus on that stuff because those are immediate needs.
Right.
Crime, drugs, the roads.
So, yeah, when you're talking about immediate needs, and I think that maybe we talked ourselves into like what the solution is because like again, I'm doing this for a reason where I'm not, I mean, I just have my ideas on, you know, the fact that I do think that, you know, you get better quality candidates when you have, you know,
for sure, when
you have marketable, you know, salary or whatever. However, I think that if the referendum is that, you know, the people don't want it, then that should be a referendum on their political figures, and right now may not be the time for it. You know what I mean? So so I would lean into saying like if that's how the community feels about it, then that's a referendum to me, and it's just like right now may not be the time to, you know, start thinking about what those increases should look like. You know what I mean? So maybe when those immediate needs, because if the immediate needs are so prevalent where people are just not, you know, feeling like this is warranted, then I'm a firm believer that there's always going to be people that are going to talk bad. They're never happy with anything.
Sure.
But if that is the overriding chorus of the people, then you got to do some self-reflection and just say maybe right now is not the time. Just like I would tell my teachers, one person fails a test, that's a kid issue. If your whole class is failing the test, that's a you issue. So if the overriding consensus is that, you know, no, there has to be a sound reason for that. And I think that as a politician or as a person, that you need to take into consideration why people are saying no. And it can't be just because they're stingy with the money. It's because they have to be unhappy in some way. And I think a better use of the time of politicians right now would be to figure out like, why are people unhappy right now? Like, we really need to fix it. And again, when we're talking about like immediate issues like roads, like crime, like those immediately everyday impactful issues, like we have to start talking about those in concert with whatever pay raises that are being, you know, discussed. And if the people are not feeling it, they're not feeling it for a reason. And, you know, that might just be something that we have to just sit on until we can have a better, or either do some better messaging about the positive. Like that might just be
sure.
Better do a better issue about messaging on the positive then. But for whatever reason, I honestly, probably because I'm not a career politician, I honestly believe that politicians and people who are in elected offices should get their cues from the people who are elected.
100%.
So if the people who are saying, you know, if there is a chorus of people, you know, the majority is like, no raises, that's crazy, there's a reason for that, and we may need to table it. Because I honestly think we should get our cues from the people.
100%. Well, I give a little bit of leverage, a little bit of leniency to those who have been in office, or those that have been kind of jaded by the process, and they hear a lot of complaints, right? So I would be in the defensive. I understand that. If you're always, someone's coming at you, well, you need to change this, you need to change it. I get it. You're in the defensive. But that's not a really good position to operate from if you want to change those things. You have to be kind of open to it and take the criticism and then develop a solution and how to fix it.
100%.
At least address it.
Yeah.
At least be aware and admit that there's an issue.
Yes, because you can't. I mean, this is just it's leadership. I mean, like you said, you was like, I mean, people who run for office, it is leadership. So in leadership, you cannot be thin-skinned. You have to be able to take the criticism, because if you are not able to take the criticism, or if you are not, and again, remember when I said at the beginning where I'm like, ooh, the things I have learned about myself from running this campaign, just the lies that may come, and the misrepresentations of your character, the character assassinations that happen, it's preparing me for, if I win, how to handle that, because that is not a fun feeling. So, my hat is off to, politicians who've been in it forever, and that they hear that type of stuff. But I honestly believe if you are jaded, you need to get out. Like, retire at some point. Right. It is okay. You have served your time. Like, one thing I have made a promise to say is that I am not going to be forever in this office. And I'm just saying that on air as a promise, only because I do believe that you have to start bringing in younger voices. Like, I want to do as much as I possibly can. I want to work as hard as I possibly can, but I also want to simultaneously, and I've already been doing it, finding younger people who are interested in politics and bringing them up with me, because at some point we have to change the guard. Like, we if you're in it so long to where now you're jaded, you cannot divorce your jadedness from your decision making. Move on.
Yeah, and you're just collecting a paycheck.
You're just collecting a paycheck.
Yeah.
Move on. There's no energy behind a jaded individual. There's no vision behind a jaded individual. Why are you there?
Even if you're not jaded and you're just complacent.
And
you're allowing complacency to exist in your departments. Right? So there's a lot of guys that I feel like I'm picking on the road department. I'm not. I'm just using them as an example because roads are treacherous in Warren. Mm-hmm. Okay. I lived in Warren for 14 years. Only until I moved out of the city recently did I really start to holy smoke. Mm-hmm. Like, man, I can tell when I get into the city limits. Why is that? And of course, people say manpower, and there's a lot of excuses.
Or is it material? Is it manpower? Is it like,
I'm sure it's a complex issue.
Yeah.
But again, your job as a leader is to find out what those solutions are and use the weaknesses that you have potentially as strengths.
Absolutely.
We're smaller and maybe we can be more nimble. We're this, that, or the other. Maybe we can flex hours. Maybe we can. It doesn't have to be done the same way that it's been done for the last 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years.
I'm just going to be honest. In my time of just examining some of the things that I've seen, just again from like, going to council and just kind of like either complaining about some things or giving, ideas on things that I, have an issue with, in the city, is different than me kind of going in council now, running for elected office and really paying like really close attention to like how things are done and how people vote. And I am telling you, and this is not throwing anybody, there are some great council people, I'm not going to name them, but there are some ones that are like literally where it's just like, no, like it can't be that just because a department head gives you a report that you don't question it and you just let it roll. You have to question things. Like, council is responsible for the budget that these people are asking for. And that doesn't mean that you have to be an expert in all things, operations or all things from the engineering department, but you should be aware enough to ask some questions. It should never just be an emergency measure all the time. Just pass the emergency measurement. No, ask some questions. And to me, I've seen enough to know that I think it's business as usual in certain situations that maybe should require a little bit more. You should ask a few more questions. So in that, like what when you're saying like, even if you're just complacent, that is one thing, and that's the reason why I said, even when I started out, where I said I think my personality is needed, not just for the 6th Ward, but for Warren in general, because I am not a go along to get along person. I am not somebody who just wants to go down there and rub elbows. I'm not just antagonistic to be antagonistic, but I say what I mean and I mean what I say, and I'm going to ask questions. I am going to, ask why things are what they are. I don't know everything, but darn near I'm going to find out because I care that much. Like, for example, just was one of the roads that I was canvassing on. I said, I never realized this road was this absolutely terrible. Like, it was 2nd Street in Warren. I was like, golly, this road is terrible. And so what it was is when I started digging into it, they fixed the roads on the sides, but they didn't fix that road because it's made out of concrete, and I guess concrete costs more to fix. Okay, well, so when is it going to get fixed then? Like, it can't just rest on, well, we have to do more because this road, requires more construction. Well, when is it going to happen? What does it need to take to make that happen? But it can't just be, somebody in the department head gives me an answer in their report and then I'm just rubber stamping it. No, absolutely not. That's not who I am. That's not my personality. I'm going to ask questions. You're not going to run just anything by me. And that's the type of energy I want to bring to council. And again, because some of it, I've been to council and some of it is just like regular measures where it's just like, this is just regular everyday stuff. But when certain things come up, it really needs to be talked about. It really needs to be talked about, honestly.
I like that you say you don't know all the answers, or you don't, nobody does. I don't know all the solutions to these challenges, but I do know if we're not at least moving in the direction to find a solution, it's never going to get done.
Absolutely.
Right? So we've got to really do that kind of stuff, is address and be aware. It's like looking in the mirror. Like, you look in the mirror, yeah, of course you want to look good, or you want... But you're looking in the mirror to take an assessment too of your health. Right. Oh man, I don't look so good.
Right.
I look tired. I look beat up. My skin's dry. My eyes are sunken in. Boy, I better start taking care of myself. We got to look in the mirror as citizens of Warren, and specifically our leaders, our elected leaders. Are you really giving it your all? Are you really trying to find solutions?
Right. Are you really trying to find solutions?
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing to me is, are you really trying to find solutions, or is it just, this is just what we can't do? Like, what we can't do. No, it has to be a way that you can do it. Now, is it going to be 100% how you want it done? Maybe not, but that's the compromise, and that's the give and take, and that's the negotiation, and but you can't just leave it as, we don't have enough officers. No, we have we are not without any resources. If we are lacking in an area, that just means we have to figure out better ways to utilize the resources that we have. It can't just be, we just don't have the resources to do A, B, C, D, and E.
I saw you recently at the Warren Welcomes Foxconn Day.
Yes.
Which I think was a really cool event.
It was.
I really am glad there was, you get a little bit of backbite, whisperings of people, it's, people are putting this on, and why is this such a big deal? And it's located in Lordstown, et cetera, et cetera. You've got some naysayers out there. But what Warren did, for the listeners who weren't familiar, is Foxconn is a massive Fortune 500 company that built new facilities out in Lordstown, and Lordstown doesn't have the zoning and wants to say like a smaller community. They're not. Whereas Warren, we want to grow, right? We want to invite anyone who's moving in, that's working at Foxconn or from wherever, to showcase the fact that we have some affordable housing, both as nice rentals, higher end, mid-range housing, etc. Right? So they had this day, Welcome to Foxconn, and I saw you there. My question is, because I do have a question, how does something like Foxconn and all these other things that are happening, how does it affect the poorest ward in the city, which is the 6th ward?
Man, does it? And that's why I was like, who had a problem with that? Like, you got to be forward thinking. Like, that's a Fortune 500 company, and not only are they moving them and you want to court them and you want to make them feel like they're the greatest people on earth so that they'll stay, you know what I mean? You want to set the example for other ones to come, because, you want to set that example. So, I mean, I can't imagine somebody thinking that was a bad thing. But in any case, the way that it affects us is tremendously. Like, the 6th ward is positioned right on the corridor, going out towards Lordstown. It's right on the corridor. I said from the beginning, those companies are going to be looking for You know, they need employment. They're going to need people who work. Not only that, with this new corporate responsibility model that everybody is like trying out these days and you know, trying to get involved in, like corporate responsibility models, you know, community benefit agreements. What does that look like for them, and how can, you know, my thought process was immediately, how can I benefit? How can I capitalize on that for the 6th Ward? Where right there, you know, if you got money to spend for some type of corporate responsibility model or some community benefit agreement, right here in this corridor is in your best interest for a number of reasons. You know what I mean? As far as like housing, when you're talking about affordable housing, there's no more affordable housing than right there in the 6th Ward, that 6B, 6C area, like right over there. Like, you know, stabilizing that area right on the corridor. If we can get that neighborhood stabilized with targeted enforcement, you know, to clean up that area, like, again, being targeted, we can't spread resources out like peanut butter sometimes either. Like, we have to do some targeted approaches. So targeting enforcement over there, targeting some neighborhood development over there, targeting some demolition over there, targeting, you know, some home ownership programs and bolstering those over there. You know, they're going to be looking for, like, you know, single family homes for new employees and things like that. So to me, I think it greatly benefits the 6th Ward for these companies to be moving in, because but that's why you have to have a person representing the 6th Ward who is forward thinking enough to say, you know what, I need to be talking to them, because there are things like those responsibility models that I know of, and they have dollars for that, and they have community benefit agreements. How do we get our people employed, and how do we get them maximize the benefit over here? Because unfortunately, a lot of times, if we are not positioned, which is why I said I'm running on accountability, and I talked about accountability, but positioning is crucial. Like, we can't wait until it's time for, you know, them to start moving and shaking. We're going to be left out as a community if we're not on the forefront of that. So what happened at that Foxconn event, I don't know if you know it or not, but when I went to that Foxconn event, I don't go places just for photo ops. I go with, you know, always in the back of my mind, I'm networking. So when I went to that Foxconn event, I immediately talked to the head of their training department, because I was like, hey, so what's going on with the community benefit agreements? Do you guys do them? Like, you know, what hiring needs do you have? You know, I'm trying to represent a whole side of town that really needs some hiring. You know what I mean? We need some economic stabilization over there. So that turned into a conversation between me and him. And then he introduced me to Alex Hertzer from Mahoning Valley Manufacturing Coalition. And so then me and Alex had a great conversation. Make a long story short, through those conversations and through that networking, and it's not announced yet, but by the time this airs, it'll be announced. I established a collaborative program. It's going to be housed out of TCAP with Compass, MVMC, Warm Forward, and it's a workforce training program, paid workforce training, where, you know, participants get paid just to do the workforce training. And by us having that relationship with MVMC, you know, they already have those existing contracts with over 61 manufacturers. So in the immediate, you know, we can find people in a neighborhood-centric model where they don't have to go, and Eastern Gateway is also a partner, where they don't have to go to Youngstown or Eastern Gateway. Those people are going to be housed right in TCAP, where they can go right in TCAP, get the same training, get the same technical training. So when it's time to hire, they can, in the immediate, be hooked up with MVMC and go utilize them. But when it is time for Foxconn, how awesome is it for us to be able to say, you know what? We have a workforce training program right here in the 6th Ward. We got people already ready to go. So that's, to me, is positioning the community to take advantage of a Foxconn. You know, Foxconn isn't just there, but how are we going to take advantage of that? Along with that program, they get 12 months job shadowing and job coaching, because a lot of times people in our community have barriers, not to get employment, but to sustain employment. So they have a liaison between them and their supervisor. So it's not just, oh, Johnny out here messing up. Well, why is Johnny messing up? I'm going to talk to the job coach, so the job coach can kind of figure out these barriers for Johnny. So, you know, when we're talking about crime, this is one thing again. If you are so far gone to where you are shooting up neighborhoods with kids, I'm sorry, you got to go. Like, I don't have a lot of sympathy for you.
Amen. But
at the same, like, I'm not soft in that way. But at the same time, I do recognize so many of our people have fell through the cracks. and we got to catch them before they get there. And we can't shake our fingers at, our people in our community to say, hey, do something legally if we don't have anywhere to send them.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So positioning our community to say, again, now we are positioned to say, hey, young man, or hey, young woman, this is where you can go to get a good paying job, to take care of your family, like positioning our community for that. So again, that's how my mind worked. And I did that before I even took office. And to your point about, I hope, whoever wins, continues to do in the community. Those are things that are going to have lasting effects. So whether I win or not, that's something that I'm doing because I recognize the need and I'm proactive enough in getting it done. But so things like Foxconn and things like Altium and things like, the Warren West development that is moving smack dab in the middle of a residential neighborhood on the West Side, they have to be responsible to us in the community. And what does that look like? And then we need to be responsible to make sure, like you said, to make them feel welcome, to make sure that they feel like they can get a good return on their investment, that, you know what I mean? So there's like we can work in symbiosis, but I think the West Side right now is positioned to capitalize on these new economic ventures. And I think administration on all aspects, whether it be council, the mayor, we have to make them feel welcomed so that they'll stay, because we need some economic stability. I'm not the mayor, so I know, but I do know the stories of like how Pittsburgh, when Steele left Pittsburgh, how they transitioned because they had somebody forward thinking enough to say, okay, well, what's the new industry? Now they're all about healthcare. You know what I mean? So what does that look like? We're positioned between Kent State. We're positioned between Kent State Branch, Kent State Maine. Kent State Branch to me is a very underutilized thing. Yes. Right here in our community. We have got to better utilize Kent State Branch. There's no reason why our kids should not have programming that's robust to attract them to go to Kent State Branch. So Kent State Branch, Youngstown State, Kent State Maine, like all of these schools are like right in close proximity. That's the same thing that happened with like Pittsburgh. With like Carnegie and like all of these like schools in close proximity. How do we utilize that to bolster what's going on in our city? Like, how do we position ourselves for that next big industry, or, to utilize the talent that's coming out of these schools to get them to be forward thinking about what could be utilized. But I think they're just resources that we are not utilizing very much in our community. Like Kent State Branch should not be looked at as like a commuter,
like a JUCO.
Like, yeah, it's looked at as it's Kent State. That's right. Still Kent State. You know what I mean? It's looked at as a JUCO, yeah. and it shouldn't be. So that's kind of how my mind is thinking, and especially like dealing with our kids in the city and our kids from the 6th Ward, funneling them to places where, if they're gonna go to college, go to Kent State Branch and, look at some of those programs, build those programs up. If you're going to go into this trade, the industrial trades, have that somewhere where they have good accessibility and promote that from a neighborhood-centric place, because we're also in a place where we almost have a generation. Like, I grew up watching my dad go to work every single day, because he literally could, when he said he got out of the Army, he went from Packard to, he got out of the Army and went to Packard and GE, and they both was like, you can come in the same day. And he stayed at GE for 40 something years. Those days are that's right. That's not what we have right now. But because I've seen how that what that afforded my family, you know what I mean? He raised 3 kids. Him and my mom and dad raised 3 kids. 2 of us college graduates. One of me have an advanced degree. So I seen what that was able to do for our family. So we have to use our bully pulpit as, administration and council to do almost as much work advocacy as we do workforce training, because we have a generation of people, of kids who have grown up not seeing parents go to work like that. They don't see the benefit of manufacturing. So we have to do a better job of even using our bully pulpit to push ideas and to be on the forefront to make these, connections like with MVMC, and push that from our bully pulpit, and make these connections with Kent State Branch and push that from our bully pulpit, and get in better alignment with Warren City Schools to find out what their real needs are outside of sports, because we all love Warren City sports, but what are some of the other needs that we can push from our bully pulpit? So that's kind of how I'm thinking And again, I don't know if I answered your question or not. I think I'm just rambling.
No, you
but,
did.
but that's kind of how I'm thinking. But I honestly see how Foxconn and everything that's going on in North Jackson and everything that's going on in Lordstown could have such great effects for us over here on the Southwest side, as long as we have somebody who is forward thinking enough to say, you know what, I'm gonna start positioning us over here on the Southwest side to capitalize. Because if not, everything gonna happen around us and we not gonna benefit from it.
You definitely answered the question. I love the way your mind works.
Oh, thanks.
And I'm gonna make a prediction here. So mark it down, Prodders. If Lea Dotson wins this race, she will be asked to do something else at some other point in her career politically, because someone that's thinking the way you're thinking is automatically going to stand out, number one, and because you have credibility. It's not like you were doing these things just since you've announced that you're running for office. You've been doing these things.
Which is contrary to popular belief, because I've heard that and I'm like, because like, oh yeah, I mean, course. You just started once she's and that's coming from that's not even coming from the constituents. That's coming from, again, I've received a lot of pushback because I decided to run as an independent, and not to get into too much about that, but
no, I'm gonna get into it a little bit. But go ahead.
Yeah, I've received quite a bit of pushback because I've decided to run as an independent, and you know, I'm an African American woman. We are traditionally very much a Democratic voting bloc, and so you know, I personally believe that, you know, unfortunately, and this is why another reason why I ran as an independent is because unfortunately that voting block gets taken advantage of. Like, we are just automatically just gonna vote. You know what I mean?
Everyone's a D.
Yeah, everyone's a D, and President Biden said, like, that's my firewall. Don't say my community is your firewall like that. That irritated me, because no, you should work for our vote. We are not your firewall. You know what I mean? Even though we function as such, but how dare you say that we're your firewall? Like, because that to me means that it's just like, I don't even have to work.
You're a given.
You're a given.
You're easy.
You're easy.
Nobody wants to be easy.
I just want to pat y'all on y'all back and tell you how much I love you. He like, even, you know, and that's federal, but just, you know, that carries down. And I think that is the overriding idea of the African American community, is that we are a firewall for the Democratic vote. And I feel like across the board, no matter what my personal politics are, which is, I'm a progressive. I'm very much a progressive, you know, leaning Democrat. But I'm not claiming it because you're going to work for my vote. I don't care who you are, Republican, Democrat, Martian. You need to work for my community's vote, and that's why I'm running as an independent. However, you know, the attacks that I've been receiving have not even come from the constituents. It's been from the machine that's like, they see me as a threat to the system, and I've been told that I'm a threat to the system. That, you know, so those attacks as far as like, you know, well, she didn't start doing anything until, you know, she decided to run for office. Who didn't? Like, you know, I've been working in this community since I was in my 20s with Doc Pugh. You know what I mean? So, you know, who didn't? Just because I'm not photo opping, you know, I've been, you know, I've done the community cleanups. I've done, you know, the community today book bag giveaways. You know what I mean? But I've grown past that, and that doesn't mean that is not something that needs to be done.
I know what you're saying.
There are amazing people out there doing it. Like, I mean, and I'm a very honest person, an upfront person. My opponent does a lot of good community service things. She really does. But that's not where I'm at. But that doesn't mean that I haven't been working. You know what I mean? And that doesn't mean that I haven't did it. A lot of times, I think sometimes people are in different spaces in their life, and they for some reason think that, you know, when I come into community services, when community service started. No, you just weren't paying attention to it because you were like doing something else for however long. It didn't just start. Like, people have been doing community cleanup since I was a kid. You know what I mean? We've been having block parties in Palmer Heights since I was a child. You know what I mean? Community days, block parties, book bag giveaways is not something that's new. You know what I mean? It's just a new people take on the realms to do it. And God bless those people because it's so needed. But that's not where I'm at right now. I've done that. Now I'm moving into a space where I want to affect policy, and I want to affect systems, and I want to affect like the overarching structures that lead to inequality. But yeah, the attacks have been, well, I'm only doing it for
political reasons.
I'm only working for political reasons. I'm like, yeah, y'all just don't know my name. But yeah, because like when the paper came and they asked, I didn't go to the paper to ask them, anything. They came to me when they were like, hey, we need a community activist to, give us some ideas on Martin Luther King. They came to me, and the reason why they came to me, because they see me at council. You know what I mean? I'm not taking photo ops at council every time I'm at council politicking for, better policy, because I've stayed at council. They know my name at council, not because of any book bag giveaways or anything I've done. They know my name at council because I'm always at council, expressing how I feel about some type of policy that I feel may be unfair. So I'm not going to be videotaping every time, because who does that? But at the same time, please don't disrespect my work in the city, because I've been working since a child. Like, I could have went to school for anything, and I went to school to better equip me to serve my community. Like, I got a bachelor's degree on how to better to better serve my community. You know what I mean? So my whole life has been mission driven. So yeah, so the attacks have been coming.
Well, you evoked longtime Democratic stalwart and community leader Doc Pugh, who had, he was the 6th Ward councilman for, I want to say a few decades, but I don't have my facts.
Yeah, I think it was a few decades.
And he had the record store, and he was an activist in the community. So there's big shoes to fill there. Obviously, Cheryl Saffold, who unsuccessfully was able to run as an independent, she's who you're running for that open seat, and she was going to try to run against Mayor Franklin. And I think the same thing that you're experiencing, she probably also experienced. That the machine, the local Democratic Party, obviously wants to support Democratic. Right. Leadership, right? But at the same time, I just want the best candidate.
That's what I'm saying.
And I think that's how most people feel. They don't, I think a lot of people became Democrats in this area because they were pro-union, or they were, they were immigrants. They were, and that ideology spoke to them. And most of the area, in Trumbull County, but in Warren for certain, was a Democratic area. So you became a Democrat to kind of vote in the primary. This is years ago, right? Now it's like, listen, I just because you put an initial behind your name, that isn't a reason to vote for someone. The reason to vote for that person is because they are expressing the same kind of ideas and ideologies and philosophies that you have about life and the socioeconomic impacts within the community, or within your state, or within the United States.
Right.
So I'm glad you touched on the challenges, because I think Cheryl had the same kind of, obviously they didn't let her run as an independent. She was a precinct committee person on the Democratic Party. How, aside from people talking smack, how has that been a challenge for you to run for this as a independent, not like I'm an independent woman, an independent candidate from an independent political party, a woman, a black woman? What's the challenge there? What are some of the challenges stuff that maybe you felt from the local party?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a challenge, to be honest, because you feel, and I'm built for it, but you feel the effects of not having the machine behind you. You know what I mean? So you definitely feel those effects. So it's I'm running a very grassroots campaign, and when you run a grassroots, as much as I have to run a grassroots campaign, because I don't have the calling, the mechanisms to call, the union people. I don't have the mechanisms to, do mailers with, Democrats. I have to fight, decades old, centuries old ideologies of what, a Democrat is, which is like, I know what that is, but I'm not too sure about you independents. What exactly is that? So I have to do as much educating on the political process as I have to do, just campaigning. So it's been kind of difficult. However, I think even, and I said this when I said this when I decided to run, it's bigger than just me running as a candidate, and it's bigger than me winning. If nothing more, that conversation has been implanted into the community as far as like, vote for people who pay attention to the issues, pay attention to the logic, don't pay attention to the rhetoric, don't pay attention to the Facebook posts, pay attention to what people are saying, pay attention to what people are standing on, pay attention to if you have an idea behind your vision, because if you don't have a plan or idea behind your vision, you are just dreaming. So pay attention to those things. And I think that my community, and again with our 500 people who are voting, we need to have somebody who is saying, you know what, and especially in this climate where, you know, we're seeing so much polarization with messaging, you know what I mean? People are and it's scary, but people are super focused on emotion. Like, people are throwing facts to the wind, and they are so swayed on a federal level, on a that partisan emotion that comes with that I really want to make the case that we have got to get away from that. Oh, in the age of misinformation where you can say anything and you know, you're not looking to critically analyze information. You're just looking at something that feeds your emotion on a situation. So everybody is talking in echo chambers. I don't want to be an echo chamber. I don't want to talk in an echo chamber. I want to break that and make sure that we are hearing from Republicans, and we are hearing from Democrats, and we are hearing from independents. Like, I can't talk in an echo chamber, and talking in echo chambers does the community and Warren at large zero good. So even that messaging. So it's been difficult in that, running as a African American woman. Oh my God, I've been angry Black woman. Oh my God.
Fear the angry Black woman.
Oh my God. I have been angry Black woman so much during this campaign, and it's been, and unfortunately, it's come from other Black people as well. It's come from across the board, because as a Black woman, you can't just be assertive. You can't just be, you know, I've said stuff or I've done stuff that in any other, and I've dealt with this as a principal too. So, you know, in any other situation, I might just be assertive, or I might just be about my business, or I might just, I mean what I say and I say what I mean. You know what I mean? But running, sometimes, you know, as a Black woman, I come off as angry, or I've been told that. And I'm like, I'm not angry. I just
think you're passionate.
I'm passionate, right?
Yeah.
I'm passionate about my community.
And you want action.
And I want action. I'm a very friendly person. I'm just not a shaking hands, kissing babies for the sake of shaking hands, kissing babies person. I want to see action. When I'm meeting people, I'm not meeting people just to take a picture with them. I want action. I want to figure out how we can work and what we're doing, and you know, what I can bring. And if I see something wrong, I'm going to say it. You know what I mean? So I've been angry Black woman quite a bit in this campaign, even to the point where if I'm defending myself against attacks, you have to be very careful of anything that you say, because of the perception. And that's been the hardest thing for me, I think, for this campaign, is that a lot of times I have to take such inventory of my natural personality, which is unfortunate, and I have to kind of bridle it a little bit, because I know I am running for office and perception matters. So I have to like think through, like, if I say this, how will it come across? And I know I'm not being angry. I'm not anything except for being who I am. But what does that look like? But like I said, even defending myself against attacks, like if people are attacking my character, or, you know, they were saying, you know, it was some stuff saying that I was lying about being a principal. Like, what? Why would I lie about being a principal? Like, this is ridiculous. So, you know what I mean? So even me clearing up the fact that I don't have to lie about being a principal, I don't have to lie about my degrees, it's like, oh my God, they fighting. I'm like, no. It is a political race. There are going to be some unpleasantries. That's going to happen. But my goodness, we just watched Doug and Ken go at it for months. And where was all of this? You know, oh my God, they're fighting. No, why can't we just be political candidates? That's gonna happen sometime. So I don't have any hard feelings, and after it's over, it still won't be any hard feelings. That is par for the course when you're dealing with politics. But at the same time, I'm going to defend me. So and because I work too hard, there's a lot of things I could do. And I think being irresponsible might be fun to do. You know what I mean? It looks fun to me,
I did it for a while. It was fun.
It was fun, right?
Yeah.
And
I wish that I've done less of it now, but yeah.
And when you bridle yourself in and say, I'm gonna make a decision to do for other people. I'm gonna make a decision to dedicate my life to, mission driven work. Don't attack my character because because there's a lot of stuff that people could be doing, you know what I mean? So to attack somebody's character as a liar or only doing it for votes or, you know what I mean? Or only doing it for a political office, not when I've dedicated my entire adult life to mission driven work. So I'm going to defend me, but just being careful of like what defending myself looks like. You know what I mean?
Well, it's funny because you get labeled as angry black woman, but a fellow who's a friend of mine and a former client, Paul Klauser, does he get labeled as an angry white man? I'm not sure. He wrote a letter to the Tribune. I don't want to read all of it because it may take a while, but he makes a good point. And this is a point that's, if all politics are local, it's to my benefit why downtown Warren is perceived in a better light, or it needs to be perceived in a better light. And really, because the spotlight really is a lot of times on downtown Warren, and if it bleeds, it leads, then we press out there, put stories in there that are the violence, the drugs, the things that are happening that are terrible, but also the things that happen when administration, even the parks, I'll go, Josh Nativio down at the comic book shop. He's labeled the rabble rouser, right? He's the guy that, everybody, Josh is just angry, and so he shits on everybody that, that needs to, that he doesn't agree with. I don't think that's necessarily true. Mm-hmm. Josh may be a bit of a curmudgeon. However, he's an educated guy, and he's bringing up points that everybody on the square feels the same way that has a business that is retail driven. So whether they're your Nate from downstairs in Weston, Maine, or you're Tony Van Kirk trying to start up a business at downtown 124, or you're some of the boutiques that are around the square, or Duma, or Bright Energy Innovators, even though they're not retail driven, but like all these different spaces, if these are the people who are your stakeholders, Mark Marvin, Paul Klauser, these guys are investing a lot of their time and resources and money into the betterment of the city, and it raises the whole, right? It raises everybody. A rising tide lifts all boats. So if we're all rising up, and you have a city that's not listening to these rising, the people who are rising up, then that is a dangerous space to be in, because it sends a message that your investment and your time and energy is maybe not important. You mentioned zoning earlier, and I think this is part of Paul Klauser's issue, and Mark Marvin's and some other folks. Like, I look around I used to live on I used to live on Genesee, and you'd walk around the neighborhood, and my kid was little, and you'd see some dilapidated houses or whatever. That has an effect, right? You mentioned that, a psychological effect. I don't even think about these things on a child, but also on the people there. Like, oh man, that house it may be only one house in the neighborhood. When you're talking about multiple houses or multiple commercial properties that are allowed to fall in disrepair because there's not policy set in place.
Yes.
The Burger King that's right behind this, our studio, that closed up, they moved up. There was obviously some gunplay that was over there. Some windows got shot out. They didn't even fix it. They just boarded it up. Now it's for sale. Now it's like a glorified parking lot. People are back there pissing in the alley and things that you. So if we don't have a policy in place and an enforcement in place to enforce these things, it becomes there is a appearance of animus when someone like a Paul Klauser or Mark Marvin or Jim Fogarty or Josh Nativio or whomever says, hey, I don't feel like you're listening to us. We need to feel safe down here. When we came down here over 15 years ago, there weren't a whole lot of people living downtown. Now there's a lot of people living downtown. And Paul Klauser wrote this. I'm going to read part of it, or maybe all of it. I'm not sure. The headline is, what is Warren doing to keep downtown safe? I'll expand that out to, what is Warren doing to keep the neighborhood safe as well, because it's not just about downtown, right? Everyone's like, oh, we're just focused on downtown. It really is this is what we lead with, right? This is our makeup on the face, right? Of course, there's other parts of the area. There's other wards in the city, and there's a lot of places that need help. I agree. The 6th ward's probably the area that needs the most help. So people are like, oh, they just focus on downtown because that's the facade. Well, it is the facade, but it also needs to be considered a place where there's a lot of commerce that's happening, that are tax revenue generated, and people need to feel safe that work and live down here or live in proximity. So here's Paul's letter. My wife and I, against advice of many, invested in downtown Warren 11 years ago, and we renovated and moved into the Defiance building on Courthouse Square. We had not been the first to commit to downtown Warren. Saratoga Restaurant, All-American Comics, Tom Duma, Howard's, Philip Sakanik, Fowler and Goodman, J.P. Morgan, Toombs, Hippodrome, Mocha House, Rossi Agency, and others preceded us. 2 ticks and the dog. To many citizens' credit, more strides were made since our arrival. Restaurants like West and Main, The Underground, Nova Coffee, Beautiful World, Bushwick, Downtown 124, Urban Tap Distillery, and Rallies opened, et cetera, et cetera. The Darlene Lounge, Modern Methods Brewery, and Charbonnet Winery had ribbon cuttings. Others, including the Box Gallery, shout out Aaron Shine, Bright Energy Innovators, Downtown Grooming Lounge, 717 Bank, 5 Grand's Fashion Boutique, Fatty Cake Soap, Bee's Holistic Hive. I'm going to read them all because if I don't read them, I feel like I'm not including. Donahue State Farm Insurance, Raymond J. Ween Foundation, and Coleman Services also opened.
Oh, Harriet's Apothecary, too.
Harriet's Apothecary, okay? Tom Duma's Jewelry and Trumbull Art Gallery expanded operations. A wedding event venue opened at the former Chase Bank building. Park Hotel was renovated. Luxury apartments and condominiums were built, and the renovated spectacular Robbins Theater opened. Light Up the Square Foundation and the Economist family installed Christmas lights on Courthouse Square. Trumbull 100 and the John Taylor family hang flowers and wreaths yearly. This impressive list represents a huge increase in quality of life in Warren, not to mention tens of millions of dollars invested in our beloved city. But now love and money are threatened. My wife and I has always felt safe living in downtown Warren, but we were shaken by recent events at the African American Achievers Festival and near the Horseshoe Bar. If statistics are correct, no one seems to dispute them. City leaders must make more investments in Warren safety services. Last year, I received a city questionnaire asking what new projects city leaders should focus on. My response was simple. Let's fix everything that is broken first and see what is left. Since then, I've heard rumors about crazy proposals for pet projects on what appears to be political gain rather than community benefit, including making a large portion of Perkins Park into a parking lot or police officers patrolling downtown on gators. I don't know what rumors are true. Some of those ideas I like. I like the officers patrolling downtown, like foot on the beat. I truly hope city leaders publicly respond to this letter with a lengthy list of things they have recently done to protect Warren citizens and tens of millions invested into downtown, along with a complete list of where other city monies will be spent further to further gains made. That response would go far in making those hesitant to venture into downtown Warren realize what I already know. Downtown Warren is a great place to invest and live, a place I'm proud to call home. It's time for City Hall to step up and protect those investments and gains. I'll expand that. It's time for City Hall, the entire leadership, the entire community, those who aren't elected officials, and certainly those who are running for office or on city council to do the same. How do you respond to a letter like that?
I mean, I didn't hear a lie. I mean,
right?
I didn't hear anything that was a lie. I mean, my thoughts are, it's just like, the old adage, if your neighbor's house is on fire and you don't put it out, eventually yours is going to catch too, you know? And I think what has happened is that, there's been certain parts of the city that's just been on fire, especially like with the crime and things. And as we're building business and as, because I remember when downtown Warren was nothing. And so I am super proud of downtown Warren. Downtown Warren looks amazing.
Amen.
You know what I mean? And as more things grow, you get more and more people coming down and taking advantage of it. And you're going to bring more and more, with more people coming down here, increases the instance of, some unsavory things. But I feel like, it's just the adage of, if your neighbor's house is on fire and you don't put it out, everything gonna burn. So, I think, some of what's happening and what we didn't take care of is filtering its way everywhere else, which is why I've never really been a fan of like the weed and seed model, right? Because I think like, yes, weed it and seed it, but all it effectively does is push it somewhere else. You know what I mean? It doesn't really get to the root of what's going on. And I think to his letter, we got to get to the root of what's happening and you know, and what does that look like? So crime is such a hard, because people think, you know, crime is just, it's economic, it's educational, it's you know, it's socioeconomical, you know what I mean? It's opportunistic. There are so many things that go along with crime. But we got to think through like what can, you know, so it sometimes when things get so big, it's just like, what do you do? So you end up doing nothing.
Yes.
Can't do it. You cannot just think that it's just such a big issue that you can't do nothing, because there's a difference between issues and problems. Crime is a problem. You got to look at each individual piece, which is different issues in it, and fix those issues. And I think that's what Mr. Clouser might be talking about, is just thinking through like, okay, we may not be able to tackle a whole problem, but what are the issues inside of that problem? The issues, what it sounds like is patrol. Like that's an issue inside of the problem. The issues may be like when you said like the ordinances or there's no laws on like what that looks like and what, you know, what vacant properties have to look like and when you have to turn them over and like what those ordinances look like and you know, more robust laws on code enforcement. Like those are issues, you know what I mean? Because part of what I'm part of my idea, even in the 6th Ward, is we have to have tougher code enforcement laws. Like we have to have tough, and this is not because all landlords aren't slumlords out here making lots and lots of money. Some are just regular working people, you know what I mean, who just, you know, happen to own a couple houses and they just trying to make a come up. But we have to make people accountable to, you know, our neighborhoods, you know, like the Burger King. I don't know who owns it because I haven't really looked into the issue, but we have to force accountability. Like what do the laws look like when we're dealing with, you know, those type of structures? So we have to have better code enforcement. We have to, like, again, what we're talking about, you know, as far as like what those look like, where can we pull money from to have more code enforcement officers? Because that's what I keep hearing. Well, we only have one. Well, we need to figure out how to hire some more. We figure out how to hire more, anything else if it's necessary. If we find that is necessary, how do we figure out how to hire some more? Where do we need to pull that money from? Because code enforcement is a big one. But I mean, to Mr. Clausus, and this is the first time that I've heard it, so off the cuff, how can you get mad at that? Like, right. There's nothing that he said that I would particularly think would be a something that would just perk my ears to be like, oh, well, maybe he's being a little bit too. No, I mean, it really is. I mean, downtown Warren, and when you think about Warren and the arts community, that's how cities grow, right? Because that's what you attract younger professionals, and you attract, like, you know, people who are gonna spend money. You know what I mean? That's how cities grow, is by, you know, investing. And it doesn't seem like it should be, but no, investing in the arts and investing in entertainment and investing, because, you know, I grew up hearing there's nothing for us to do. There's nothing. That's why we moved, because there's nothing for, you know, young professionals to do. There's nothing for young people to do. And we hear that a lot with our young kids. There's nothing for our young kids to do. We need a community center where there's nothing for 30 to 40-year-olds to do either. And this is where downtown is filling in those gaps. So I'm super happy to see what's happening downtown. So we have to protect it. We have to protect it. And it's bigger than just, you know, it's bigger than one or two businesses. A city's downtown is the heart. That is, again, when you're thinking about growing a city and when you're thinking about, you know, investing in spaces that are going to pay dividends in the long run, you have to protect your downtown. You have to. So, I mean, I don't live down here, but I do understand, you know, urban planning enough to know that there has to be you have to pay attention to what's going on downtown for sure. Or else that is like a big draw for any city, is to have a good, robust downtown.
Well, to the administration's credit, I heard it through the grapevine that they did put a call into Paul, and that's nice. You know, that's a first step. Mm-hmm. The next step is to hopefully implement some of these solutions. And, you know, there's going to be some people where code enforcement is not feasible, either because it's an older population and someone can't take care of the weeds in the yard, or they're not going to paint the house, or they didn't have money to fix a broken window, so they just boarded it up. There needs to be an alternative to just finding that person, and maybe that's where the community and community leaders can get involved in, hey, Mrs. Jones' house, she's lived here for 40 years. She raised her family here. She's the last one there. How do we find someone to take care of Mrs. Jones's house? Can we get someone to paint that house? Yeah. Well, it's not my responsibility. It's not my house. I get it. But like you say, if the house next to you is on fire, it's only a matter of time till your house catches on fire too. I'll give us a little bit of kudos out to Michael O'Brien. There was an empty lot to the caddy corner to me when I lived on Genesee. It was actually a house. There was a house. There was a beautiful house. And I think we were there maybe a year, and that house caught on fire, and it was unsalvageable. It basically burned from the inside out. It was all brick, and they demoed it. And for a long time, no one was cutting the grass there. Even the city, there's a department to do that, to cut the grasses in delinquent properties. I look across the street, and Michael lived down the way a little bit. He was the mayor at the time. Now, I know this is not the mayor's job and maybe not a good utilization of his time if someone would be critical of it, but I look across the street, and there's Mike O'Brien, the mayor of the city, cutting the grass in a vacant property that was in his neighborhood that he was able to wheel his lawnmower over to and cut. And I called him over, hey, what are you doing, man? And, Michael has a certain way of talking. I'm going to do like my Michael O'Brien impression. He was like, hey, no one was cutting this grass, so I just went over there and I just decided to cut it. It was.
That's a good impression.
Oh, thanks.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll warm up later. With a couple of drinks, I really can get into it. But I'm doing sober October, so you'll have to catch me at another time. But he took it upon himself not to call the department and I'm just gonna do what's right and do the job. It's like when I see broken glass in the road. Sometimes you don't have to call. You could just pick it up. Just pick the shit up.
Right.
Because it may not be your tires it's going to slash, but it's going to be somebody's, and it could be yours if you forget it's there. And just pick the stuff up.
And that's going to be. I mean, I'm a realist. So even though I'm pushing this idea of community accountability, because that's what you're talking about right there. It's just how do we move people from, this is mine, this is what I'm doing, and to moving them into a space where we do look out for each other. It took a long time for us to get this apathetic. So, but we got to start the ball rolling because that mindset that would precipitate, Michael O'Brien going in and just cutting the grass is because he care about his community. He know that when that looks bad, that makes everything over here look bad.
Right.
This is my community. I'm running for the 6th ward. It's just been decades. So when you say there's one vacant lot, imagine dozens.
Right. Right.
When there's one house, imagine nice house, okay house, just terrible
sure
vacant lot. You know what I mean? So imagine
even a block off downtown, off the square.
Yeah.
I drive through these back streets, Porter and whatnot, when I go to the post office or the church, and it's
it's kind of bombed over there too.
Man, there's a lot of issues here, right?
But then the crazy part about that's the thing about when you get on and you start walking, which is why if you are a council person and you are not walking the streets, I don't know what you're doing. If you're a council person and you're not literally riding the streets slowly and this is one thing I committed when I said I was running for council. The door knocking is not going to stop after, because I actually like door knocking. I'm weird and I like door knocking. But the door knocking I can't say that I can do as much, but I said I'm going to commit once a month just to knock on random doors and be hey, what's going on, just to talk to people, because walking the streets so different from riding them.
Sure.
Walking and slowing down the patrol that we do, so different. I've seen some amazing houses, some beautiful houses, and it drives me crazy that they're living next to what they have to live next to. You know what I mean? So imagine that, and unfortunately, because it's been decades of that, people have become so insulated and to themselves where, that idea of, this is our community sometimes gets lost, right? So we have to do a better job, and this is what you said, and this is why, the people who do those charitable and like those feel good things, we have to support them. And my idea is just because, I'm not the one doing that anymore. I'm, again, more focused on the big thing, but I want to be the one because we got to find somebody that's getting y'all the money to do it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's where I'm at, is just making sure that we find resources for them to continue their good works. But we have to get back to that, because there's something even psychological, and we laugh about it, but this is something that we've said all the time from growing up. We will ride to Howland. And I remember being young where we would ride and go to Howland because I had a friend, Erica Glover, who lived in Howland, but she played for Warren G. Harding. So we would go over to her house in Howland. We would instinctively turn our music down. We would turn our music down because we were like riding through Howland. But it was psychological to say, like, you don't do that over here. A, because they probably gonna call the cops on you, but you don't litter over here. But how horrible. Like, think about that. Like, you're leaving your neighborhood and thinking more highly of somebody else's neighborhood because you're going there, so you have more respect for somebody else's neighborhood. That still happens. That is psychological and crazy.
It's also representative because of how it's perceived,
yes.
right? So it's like Malcolm Gladwell wrote The Tipping Point, and one of the chapters in there focuses on New York City and how New York City went from a very high crime, slum infested in some of the areas before they were gentrified, and some of these areas where there was crime and there was drugs and there was all this stuff. And the tipping point that he identifies is public transportation in the subway. They had subways were covered in graffiti, and they'd clean it up, and it would get covered again. And they finally got to a point where they had some graffiti, anti-graffiti paint. They started using that stuff, and slowly but surely, people started to respect the subway.
Yep.
And then that reached out into some of the public areas, like the where everybody kind of coalesces to jump on public transportation, right? And so once the subways were cleaned up, then the bathrooms were cleaned up. Then that stretched out into the other places.
Yes.
It's like if I go to the park and I go into one of the public bathrooms and all the shit's broken, the fixtures are broken, and there's poop on the ground, and there's it's easy for a human to justify then, well, if I pee on the floor, I guess that's okay, but when you walk into a very nice bathroom or a nice neighborhood in your example, you start to think, oh, I don't want to mess this up. It's like going into a guest's house, right? And you're like, you're extra cleaning that space up. Because it's not yours, right? We have to treat our home and our hometown in a very similar capacity.
For sure. And like I said, like the psychological effect of it being your side of town, but you thinking highly of somewhere else. Like, we got to break that. Like, we have to do so much. And again, it's going to take overtime. It's going to take, which is why when you say, like, I hope y'all work together, we're going to have to. We are going to have to. Whoever wins this election is going to have to work with the other one, because we are going to have to work overtime. If both of us are committed the way that we say we're committed and really want the best, we have to work overtime to change that, because time is not something that we really have a luxury of doing if we really want things to change. And I think right now with, the industry coming in with Warren West development, where, I just heard again, you got to follow the money. There's people wanting to invest. People don't invest unless they feel like they can make some money.
Right.
So this to me is letting me know that we are on the economic incline somewhere, somehow. So we have to capitalize on that. And right now, we cannot afford to just be ho-humming on the west side, because we'll get rolled over. And to Mr. Clauser's point, can't allow, when you see the writing on the wall where you're seeing certain things happen, can't allow for them to take root. You have to stop it where it's at before it starts to become a bigger problem. And so I get his frustration, and I think his frustration and the frustration that we experienced on the 6th Ward are the same frustration. He doesn't want things to take root, and we are saying over there, like, now is the time for us to uproot the things that have been affecting us. But right now is the time, period. Yeah.
Well, I want to dovetail off of that thought too, and challenge anybody that's out there that's in the city that lives in the 3rd Ward. which is where I grew up. We can't. You'd mentioned earlier, like, oh, you know, when I was a kid driving to East Market Street, I didn't think, you know, this was possible, right? It's like two different worlds in a sense.
Yeah.
Warren is one body. The wards are the extremities. You don't get into, you know, you don't develop an ailment, we'll call it cancer because you don't have cancer in your hand.
Right.
And this hand ignores it. The rest of the body ignores it because it has cancer. Oh, well, if we don't look at it, it'll just go away. You have to treat that.
Right.
So the folks that are living in other areas, they need to kind of take an account of what's happening in wards that are not their own.
Yes.
Because the weakest link, you're only as strong as your weakest link, right? So those living in the third ward, they have to take account of what's happening in the sixth ward and do some good there too, because if we don't treat this cancer in my hand, I can't. What are you going to do? You going to amputate it?
Right.
You can't amputate it. It's going to make the whole body sick. So I've got to figure a way how to treat this. And I hope people start to think like that a little bit more. Yeah,
and unfortunately, the cancer that's in our hand, in a lot of ways, and again, because I'm a lover of history, but I experienced a lot of it. Like, I'm old enough. I still think I'm young, and I'm not. I'm like middle age.
You're young,
but I'm old enough to remember when the grocery store is closed. I'm old enough to remember when, you know, they closed the Western Reserve. I'm old enough to remember when the hospital was taken away. I'm old enough to remember, you know, when our fire stations and things were taken away. So, like, sometimes we also do got to call it what it is. The West Side was disinvested. It was historically disinvested. I mean, that's the running thought, is that not even thought, but we lived it, so we saw, you know, the disinvestment that happened in Warren, because there was a lot of flight outside of the West Side, and then it was just like, everything went with it. And so when it was time to budget cut and to take things away, West Side constantly, you know, was the first to get those cuts and, you know, taken away, and, you know, everything was kind of pushed to the East Side. So there was a lot of there's still like a lot of hurt behind that on the West Side. So you have more of a cynicism over here on the Southwest Side as it relates to like city services and everything. So we are, but the thing about it is, with that, you know how like almost like that scrappy kind of like us against the world type of thing, that's very prevalent on the West Side. Like, there's so much West Side pride on the West Side, where it's just like, no, we from the West Side. Like, this is art. So we still do have that we are super proud people. And like I said, like you ride by and you be like, these houses are beautiful. You could take, my dad has a five bedroom. I grew up in a 5-bedroom, 2 full bathroom, 2-car garage, like house, where his property value has not grown in probably 30 years. You could take his house.
It's probably went the reverse.
It did.
Until recently.
Sure. Yeah. You could take his house and quadruple it if you put his same house anywhere else. You know what I mean? Yeah. But it's still a gorgeous house. You know what I mean? And all of the neighbors who own their house around my dad still have beautiful homes. And it's just, you know, we have to, and that's my thing, is that when I get in, I'm gonna speak it into existence. But when I get in, it's just working double time of making sure that we push that positive and highlight the positive, to say, you know what? No, we are scrappy. This is our community. We need to take care of it. You know what I mean? We are not accepting. You are not. I said it on a video, and I was like, you can move in around my dad or around me if you want to, and think you about to sell drugs or something. I'm telling you now. I'm telling you now. You will be told on messing with me. You know what I mean? Because you're not about to put my 85-year-old dad in danger because of your shenanigans. You know what I mean? So we have to get, you know, you're not about to move across the street from Miss Taylor, who's been, you know, living and taking care of her house for decades, and now because there's a rental across the street, landlord, you gonna rent to anybody, knowing that it's a whole nope, you're not doing it around me. So I think we have to get back to that type of no nonsense personal accountability, because one thing I do have to admit, we put way too much, well, I can't say way too much may be a little bit much, but we need to make sure we have our own accountability as people and as humans towards each other. It cannot just be that it is the city's sole responsibility to save us. in any way, shape, or form.
Yes.
We have to do better as humans. And I think that's definitely the platform I'm running on, is just accountability to each other as humans, accountability from the city, and positioning my community to take advantage of some of these opportunities that are springing up.
Lea Dotson, strong, smart, independent candidate for the 6th Ward Council in this upcoming election. Lea,
Yes.
how can the Prodders find out more information about you? How can they contact you if they need to? Give us your handles if you have.
So you can always reach me on Facebook. I have Lea Dotson for 6th Ward. You can always see some of my platform, campaign platform, anything like that is there. You can reach me just my regular Facebook page. How else can you reach me? We've been doing a lot with Warren Forward. I don't think I talked a lot about that, but we've been doing a lot with Warren Forward. That's another, venture that, we can be reached at. And the whole idea behind Warren Forward is just, younger, politically minded citizens who are super interested in pushing positive information dissemination and encouraging, us moving forward as a community, and understanding, like, from a progressive standpoint, what our strengths are, where our areas of opportunity lie, and providing solutions towards some of those things. So you can always reach me at Warren Forward, the Warren Forward page, and inbox me, have a conversation, go out for coffee. Like, if you really want to get to know me, or, get off of social media. Like, so I know what social media is, and social media to me is like advertising. Like, before I started running for office, it was just a way for me to play with my extended family, like laugh and joke. But now that I'm running for office, it's just an extension of marketing. But the MBA in me knows what marketing is. Marketing is an illusion a lot of times. Like, I'm an authentic person, so what you see is what you get. But at the same time, I am never above just having a real live conversation. Like, pay attention to what people say and do offline is what my best advice would be. Like, I can say and do anything. I mean, I am an authentic person, so what you see online is what you get, good, bad, or ugly. But talk to people offline. Like, please folks, get to know people. Go back to, like, just talking to people for real, because social media can be an illusion and a dangerous place if we let it.
I'm proud to know you, and to have this time where we are dedicating some time offline, or even though this show will be online, but dedicating some time to have a real conversation.
Yeah,
exactly.
Real conversation. Yeah.
I wish you the utmost success, both in your upcoming election and in the future. I want to stay in touch because I really like your vibe.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on the show today.
Appreciate you having me, for sure. Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, listeners, lovers, and friends, Lea Dotson for 6th Ward Council. She's running as an I. Give her a shout out. Until the next time, feel free to share this episode too with your friends and family from Warren or from other areas, even outside of the city or Ohio, because I think some of these ideas that Lea shared today are prevalent across the United States. Until the next time, stay electrified, be kind to one another. You can always check us out on theprodcast.net. That is powered by MDI Studios. That's a wrap, folks. We'll catch you in the next episode. And Lea, good luck.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.